Hey gang, Scott here. In this video, we're taking a look at the light tool in the Essentials group in Luminar AI. This is part 2 of a 2-part series on the light tool. So if you haven't watched the first part, check the show notes. There'll be a link below to it. This video is only going to talk about the more advanced controls in the curves section of the light tool. So with that, if you haven't seen the first part, go ahead and watch it. I'll be here when you get back, and then we'll dive into curves in the light tool. The controls for curves are at the bottom of the light tool. If we expand those, we have curves controls for 4 different things. We have luminance, which is your brightness and darkness, red channel, green channel, and blue channel. Now, if you have noticed, you'll see some points on this curve. Many times, templates will do a bit of color grading by adding slight changes to the various red, green, or blue color curves. And so if you are finding a particular color treatment that either you like or you don't like that has been applied by a template, and you can't find where it's being applied, take a look at the curves because it might be hiding in there, and it's not the easiest one to root out. It wouldn't be like, looking for mood or toning or things like that. But let's go through the controls here. Let's start with the luminance curve. So the way this tool is laid out is that there's a bunch of different controls here. But in brief, lower left is pure black. Upper right is pure white. And we can see this histogram here. So we know we're going from dark tones on the left over to bright tones on the right. But why the angle? Well, it's because these different control points let us take slices. Let's say like here is the shadow region. Here is our lower midtones. Here's our upper midtones. And here's our highlights. We can raise or lower the luminance or brightness of those regions with these control points, these curves controls. So for example, this here is our lower left, that's our shadows. That's actually slightly raised. I can drag that down to make that pure black. Now, let's say I want to have my lower midtones, this is a little bit deeper, right? I can pull that down, and watching the photo, only the areas that are kind of shadowy are being decreased in luminance, right? I took what would normally be right around this crosshair here and said, hey, these tones, which are normally a lower midtone, make those even darker. On the opposite end, so these upper midtones, which would normally be kind of bright, make them even brighter. And then here, I'm making sure not to overdo it on my highlights. Those highlights are already going to be bright, some very bright clouds in there. And so this is a classic kind of S curve. It's a gentle S, which is adding contrast. But you can do all sorts of different controls here. If there's a particular shadow region that, this was raised up ever so slightly from pure black, that's introducing kind of like a matte muted look for the shadows only. I've said take pure black and make it a little bit less than pure black. So you have lots of different controls here. You can have as many pins, I think up to about 10 of these control points. But a key thing about curves is these adjustments are subtle. Less is more. If I start to push these too far, you create these very ugly, solarized, strange-looking patterns. When you have large bends in a curve, those can not look so good. They're just not so pleasing. So less change is more. So that's the luminance curve. You can use it to control the brightness or darkness of very specific tonal regions in your photo. Let's take a look at the color channels now. We have red, green, and blue. These all operate the same way. It's a little different than luminance. We still have the same general controls here, but when you're working with the color curves, you're really trading off one color for another. Your color wheel. If you add more red to a photo, you're taking away cyan. Green plays against magenta, and blue plays against yellow. So the easiest way to see this is just in action. Let's pick this red here. And if I nudge this, I'll push it really far. I'm adding a whole bunch of red to this scene, but I'm taking away cyan at the same time. If I pull down this, I am adding cyan. Now, where the brightness parts come in is, once again, we have control of the regions. If I wanted to add more red into just the shadows or just the lower midtones or the upper midtones, I set those various points. Let me click a couple of control points here and say I just want to add a little more red into the highlights for whatever reason, just a little tinting, a little toning. I have that control here. This is a deeper, richer level of control than, say, I have with the color harmony tool in the professional group. This is for really fine-grained work. I'll just, I want you to see these things in action here so you understand what they are. I'll undo those points that I added. The same for green. There's one point here. If I add more green, I'm taking away magenta. If I remove green, I'm adding magenta. So this is a way to add like a twilight kind of look to a photo, is decreasing the green. Undo. And then blue trades blue and yellow. Let's do it in the shadow area. Like in here, I can reduce the blue in the shadows. We'll start to see more warm tones come in. And if I push it forth, you see more blue tones come in. But notice that it's only affecting, largely only affecting the shadow areas. The curve, the second point, makes it all smooth out, and it's kind of protecting those highlight areas, right? So I push really far. I see a little dip in the highlights, little raise in the highlights, but not much. The reason I point out these curves controls, there are much easier ways to do color tinting and color correction in Luminar AI. Many of the templates will apply curves in this way to do a color treatment on your photos. If you add a template and it has this certain color treatment, you can't find it changed in mood or color harmony or toning. Take a look in the curves area. You might find, there's color curves added. Matter of fact, that's where these came from. These original curves here, these were added by a template, and I'm now just fine-tuning them to my liking based on what was already there. I obviously liked the template because I chose it, and I can just tweak and change things. Like I kind of liked reducing the blues in that shadow area, giving a little more of a green feeling. Because I'm reducing blue, I'm adding yellow into the shadows. So that was kind of a nice touch. But that is how the curves work. Definitely an advanced tool. And if you never go into curves other than to notice, it's been applied by a template, it's totally fine. But if you wanted to dig in a little deeper, well, now you've got some knowledge and you can go have fun and play with that. You got other questions about it? Go ahead and drop them in the comments below. And until next time, my name's Scott Davenport. Have fun.